that made me think you get life in a dirty
Hmm.
pond, which I call the
Yeah.
goo to you theory. That there was some sort
Okay.
of goo, and then over billions of years, it became us. So let's look at that mathematically, because we know now that life runs code. So let's suppose
Okay.
that the code somehow got in the right position to become life. Okay. And by the way, 1964, a Yale scientist computed the odds of that happening by chance as one in a number with 100 billion zeros. Not one in 100
Wow.
billion, one in a number with 100 billion zeros. So about the same likelihood as you and I winning some big lottery 11 billion times in a row.
You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clausen. Today, we're exploring the fascinating intersection of science and faith with a truly remarkable guest. Doug L. is a man of extraordinary intellect with an even more extraordinary journey. With a double major in math and physics from MIT, a master's in theoretical mathematics from the University of Maryland, and a law degree earned magna cum laude. Doug has the rare combination of scientific rigor and legal precision that allows him to examine evidence from multiple perspectives. What makes Doug's story particularly compelling is his personal transformation. Growing up as an atheist, he spent over 30 years meticulously investigating the relationship between science and God, ultimately finding that rather than being in opposition, the latest scientific discoveries actually point towards intelligent design. As he says, I needed scientific evidence to believe in God. And to his surprise, he found it. In an age where specialized knowledge often creates silos, Doug's interdisciplinary approach harkens back to the Renaissance, when thinkers freely crossed boundaries between fields in pursuit of truth. His professional accomplishments are equally impressive, from drafting the first 401k plan in professional sports to representing major corporations and unions, all while conducting his independent research into the cosmic question that drives his passion. Today, Doug is here to challenge what he calls the most dangerous myth in our modern age, the belief that science and faith are inherently opposed. So grab your coffee and that steering wheel if you're listening to us on the radio, open your mind, and join us for what promises to be a thought-provoking conversation about the universe, consciousness, and the evidence that led one skeptical scientist to faith. Doug, welcome to the 5am
Thank you, Michael. I'm
podcast.
delighted that we could do this. Thank you so much for having me. Been looking forward.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. And we got to talk about your books too. I didn't put that in the intro, but I know that you've been prolific in putting pen to paper, and I'm sure that's a blessing to so many. Now, you've described yourself as a former atheist who found faith through science, which contradicts what many
Yes.
might expect. Could you walk us through that pivotal moment or those discoveries in your scientific exploration that really began shifting your perspective away from atheism?
Sure, Michael. Well, uh, I grew up in a Christian house and went to Sunday school, but I'm always been an incredibly nerdy guy. I still am. I still love science
Okay.
and math and things like that. But when I was in high school, I read that um, people thought life started in a dirty pond, and there's a name of a now
Yeah.
discredited experiment to that effect. And when I read that, I thought, well, if you don't need God to explain life, I mean, what is religion doing? And I drifted away from the church. I thought that science had the answers and religion didn't have the answers, and I couldn't have been more wrong. So when I went to MIT, I considered myself an atheist. And to speed up the story, when I was in my early 30s, my son was born, and my wife insisted we get him baptized. So I thought about that ridiculous proposition, and I immediately said, "Yes, dear." That was not the place to fight over. You want to sprinkle some holy water on the kid, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, but we went to church, and Michael, I just sensed something. I sensed I was missing out on a lot of something really the most valuable part of life. And I was making money and professionally successful as a lawyer, but I just sensed there's so much more peace and joy, and I wanted it. I didn't have that in my life. So, but I told myself, Doug, you're an MIT guy. You can't believe in this God stuff unless there's evidence for it. You better. So I taught myself molecular biology. I read a lot of books on cosmology and began the journey, which is now 40 plus years and getting stronger every year. And what I've found
Wow.
is that science absolutely supports the existence of God. There is no other explanation. And that's kind of the key theme. If I could just tell you about my latest book, which I don't make any money on, it's published by the
Yes.
Discovery Institute in Seattle, Washington, which you've
Okay.
probably heard of them. They're the number one organization in the
Yes.
world on intelligent design. And uh, it's a graphic novel. And for those who aren't familiar with that term, that doesn't mean it's X-rated. It just means it's like a cartoon book. Okay, it's aimed at a younger audience, uh,
Okay.
and it's about 200
Nice.
pages. It's called The God Proofs, and it goes through three proofs for the existence of God. And one of them's a logic proof. I mean, I was a mathematician. I know what it takes to prove something, and it's based on three fundamental assumptions that I don't think anybody can deny. But to get back to my journey, what the pivotal moment I think was, and this is going to sound really nerdy, but the machine parts in our body are called proteins. They're made. Our bodies have these incredible machines that snap together these things called amino acids, and they snap together like, connecting blocks. And there's 20 different types of them, and there's this incredible code that churns them out. And when I started computing on the back of literally on the back of an envelope when I was on a plane, the odds of getting this exactly right, I saw by chance it couldn't have happened in the history of the universe. Uh, Nowhere near enough time. And that's when it struck me that science shows the existence of God.
Mm.
Michael, it's really sad because I've read
Well,
stuff that
that,
uh,
yeah,
something like one quarter of the entire population thinks that science is contrary to God. Have you read something like that?
I have. And probably was taught to me in
Yeah.
high school
Yeah,
by my
and it is
teachers.
nonsense. It is nonsense.
Mm.
So my first book was called Counting to God, where, again, being a nerdy guy, I counted through 7 areas of science that support the existence of God. I launched it with a lecture at MIT, my alma mater, and which is available on YouTube. Anybody wants to put in Doug L. MIT, it'll be there. It's about an hour lecture. And there are so many areas. So, should I tell you about some of them? What would you like?
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Please
the
do.
first one I think is the most fundamental, and that is why does anything exist? Okay. And,
Yeah.
it's pretty profound. You don't walk around every day thinking about that question, but it's a fair question. Why is there something rather than nothing? And secular science, by which I mean science without God, has really got no answer for that question. You can talk about some sort of
Hmm.
imagined Big Bang, but there's no basis for any science for what the heck caused that. And we can get into what that means and why the theories without God don't work. But there had to be a first cause, because what we know now, and this is from Einstein, is that space and matter and time are all connected through these incredible equations called the
Hmm.
equations of general relativity. And you've probably heard, if you go super fast, time changes, length changes, mass changes, they're all related. So space time with matter and energy are fantastic equations. It was all created at once. People used to think that the universe
Hmm.
was internal,
Wow.
but science figured out a century ago that the universe had a beginning. So you have number one, something that science cannot explain without God. Now, that by itself doesn't prove the God of the Bible, but we're heading in that direction. I think you would admit we're heading at
Okay.
something outside of
Yes.
space, some being, some force outside of space and time, something that created our universe. Now, for number two on my count, let's look at that. And so, how do you tell whether it was just some sort of accident or it was designed? Well, now we
Hmm.
get into the way the universe works, and there are laws of physics that apply everywhere across the universe. And as I like to say, how can you have laws without a lawgiver? Yeah. um,
Mhm. Yes,
it's
you can't.
and in these laws there are certain fixed numbers that are called constants. You know, like the force of gravity, the speed of light,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
the mass of the proton compared to the electron. There are actually dozens of these constants, and they are all precisely fine tuned. So, to give you an example,
Hmm.
the strength of gravity is, and Stephen Hawking proved this, although he was an atheist. But the amazing thing is, he couldn't see God, even though he
Hmm.
basically proved the existence of God. He found that gravity is fine tuned to such an extent that it's like picking the right marble out of a big pile of marbles as big as the nearest star. Okay, that's your.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and there's
substantial.
so many other factors like that. It's like walking into, imagine there was like a control room for the universe where there's all these dials, the strength of gravity, the speed of light,
Yeah.
the strength of the strong nuclear force, things like that. And everyone was exactly set to the exact. I mean, we're talking one in trillions factors
Hmm.
for life. I mean, that looks like design, and
Yeah.
there's no explanation without God for that. Now, some scientists, I mean, people come up with all sorts of creative stuff to deny God. That's for darn sure. Some people will tell
Right.
you. By the way, I talk a
Yes.
lot, so feel free to interrupt me at any time.
Oh no.
But
Yes.
they'll come up, they'll tell you there's something called this multiverse. Maybe you've heard of that term,
Oh
and
yes.
it's to be that
I
there's this
have. Yeah.
infinite collection of universes, and we just got lucky. Go figure. Well, first of
Hmm.
all, let's just say the obvious: the multiverse is not scientific. You can't test it. I mean, they just made it up. Okay. And second of
Hmm.
all, which they don't tell you, is there is a scientific theorem by three very famous cosmologists. That
Okay.
if there is a multiverse, it can't be infinite. You can't have infinite going back.
Oh, yeah.
Which basically means the
Okay.
multiverse idea is useless because you still haven't explained why the universe exists. You just can't keep going backwards. So we have an incredibly designed universe. Okay. So,
Yeah. So then I have a question. I was going to ask you about biochemical intricacies
yeah,
of living organisms, but seeing as how we're talking about the multiverse, which is pretty popular in our
yeah.
popular culture. Um, so people talk about Project Bluebeam or other research, time travel type research things like that. Do you think, as it's presented to us, and I'm thinking of Doc Brown, of course, because I'm a huge fan of the silver screen, do you think there's any merit to any of that theoretical conversation about time travel and
I,
other
I
types
don't
of
think
government
we're going to
projects?
time travel in this lifetime. I
Yeah,
don't see how
yeah,
it contradicts the laws of physics. I mean, it's just time
okay,
is a one-way arrow to us. But you have God sitting
yeah,
outside of
okay,
time, the creator of time. And
yes,
but no, I think it's fan. I love time travel stories. I love time travel movies. They're really
yes.
really fun. There's so many good ones. But it violates the laws of physics as we know them. So
Yes. What I found interesting about the time travel, because it is a fantastical thing to think about and to like, just imagine. But then you look at what Jules Verne wrote about time travel, and you have this man who has this tragic, we'll say, personal crash and disaster in his life. Cataclysm is the word I was looking for, and so he wants to try and fix it. It's almost like he wants to play God
yeah,
within the realm that was created by the one who sits outside of it. And they all seem like
yeah.
cautionary tales, these time travel things. And in fact, speaking of time, there was that I don't know if you were ever a fan
Oh,
of the
loved it,
Twilight Zone.
loved it.
Uh,
Yeah,
as a show. Okay, so my friend John and his brother Malcolm and I, when we were really young, like in that 8 to 10 or thereabouts age range, man, we consumed as much of that Twilight Zone. We'd stay up as late as we could till it came on a weekend or something. And there was that story of this fellow that found a
yeah,
stopwatch where he could stop time, and then the watch breaks. And so he can't restart it and go back. Can you talk a little bit about maybe this folly, this idea that humans control, let's say, an environment that they were placed into?
Well, I mean, yeah, this scientists like to think that, right, human beings can do everything. It's called humanism. We can't. We have
Mm,
our limitations. We're going to die. We can't change the laws of physics, and that includes we can't go back in time. Um, you know,
right.
I and it also means we're
Yeah,
not going to
we get
figure
one
out
chance.
everything. I mean, when it comes to God, we only know what God wants to tell us.
Yes. Well, even after a seed producing after its
Yeah.
own kind, just the thought of, so in our yard, it's it's a place for people with green thumbs. Our house, our yard, and we have this maple tree that's well over 100 years old, and it's quite a sculpture. And the birds love it, and we love it. It has lots of burls and bumps and decades of pruning evidence on it. But boy, every year there is enough seeds for us to give seeds to every single person in our town for them to plant a tree that would replicate whatever is
Yeah.
inside that seed. And they could grow trees that would last for hundreds of years as well, that would generate thousands or millions of seeds over its lifetime. And so I'm just kind of running down this rabbit trail about seeds and horticulture. Can you talk a little bit about maybe the mathematics or the science behind what's actually contained in a seed or an
Sure.
acorn or
Sure.
something like that?
Yeah. Let's get into uh, let's talk about life. What is life?
Yes,
And then we'll, I think with a little background before we get into your question, Mike. Um,
sure.
so
Okay.
I think the most famous, certainly the most important discovery in biology, perhaps ever, but certainly in the last 100 years, was the discovery of DNA. Okay. And what
Mm,
is DNA? And DNA is digital code. Okay. So digital code is it's a code. It comes in four different letters. Now, computers use ons and offs. So that's called a binary code. There's just two letters. Writing has 26 letters plus spaces and punctuation. So,
mhm.
but it's still a digital code, uh, and digital code can be fantastic, and it can do incredible things. You and I are talking, separated by a couple
Yes.
thousand miles at least, over digital code, traveling at the speed of light. It's
Yeah.
incredible technology. Well, human beings did not invent digital code, much as we like to think that we're important.
Right.
Digital code was invented by God, and every form of life runs digital code. Okay. The digital code is the DNA. Again, it's four different uh, letters, and there are incredible machines in all of life. We're just going to generalize right now before we get to human beings
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
can copy this code. And do you know what a 3D printer is? Um, yeah,
Yes,
most people do
absolutely.
these days. Us old guys, maybe not, but you young folks do. I mean, so they can take digital code and build something, right? A three-dimensional object. Well, all of life, we have trillions of 3D printers in our body that build proteins, which are the machine parts for life. So what you've got is advanced digital code. Now let's get back to your tree and the acorn. Okay.
Sure.
So
Yes.
this digital code that the oak tree has, or was it a maple? I'm sorry, a maple.
It was a maple, but I love oak trees as well, so I just threw the acorn in, but it's a maple tree that I was
Yeah.
specifically mentioning, yes.
So that maple tree, it's got digital code, and it is in uh, so finely tuned that it can not only reproduce itself, it is in the right order to make copies of itself, including copies of all the machines it needs to read itself, the 3D printers, they're all in that code. How to build the 3D printers, how to build the machines that copy the code. Um, and it is fantastic technology. Okay. And that is how these little tiny seeds. I mean, when you think about it, it's incredible. I mean, when a human being is conceived, you start with a single
Yeah.
cell, and it ultimately divides into 30 trillion cells and specialized, and it all comes from this incredibly complex computer code. We have in human beings now, our DNA has about 3.2 billion with a B letters, as you probably heard. And
Okay.
uh,
Yep.
so scientists in 2011, there were 400 scientists worldwide. It's called the ENCODE Project, ENCODE. They were given the job of starting the process of figuring out how human DNA works. And in 2011, they published 30 major pages. This is over 400 of the world's top scientists. And they said, first of all, the human DNA, the human digital code, is fully functional or almost so. Okay, so it's, this people had always thought about junk DNA were cobbled together by evolutionary junk. Well, no,
Mm-hmm.
they said, we don't understand it all, but it is advanced. Bill Gates called DNA the far for digital code, but far more advanced than anything human beings have ever made.
Mm.
And then in
Wow.
2012, these 400 scientists came out and said, by the way, this code has at least two levels of information. So think of like,
Mm.
I like classical music. I like Bach, a fugue
Yes.
where you've got different layers of, melody coming at you. You have incredible code. And so how does that maple tree reproduce? It's got good code.
Yes. Yes. Very good code. And so this discussion right here about the biology even reinforces what you're talking about how fine-tuned the constants of the universe are. And I was chatting with an atheist fellow. I was on his podcast, and I like words, and I like the history and how words come together, and the Latin, and a lot that I don't understand, but I love the language, like the
Yeah.
code that you're talking about with our 26 characters and spaces. And I said to him, well, just take the word universe. Uni, we all know what a unicycle is. It's like one. And then we look at the word verse. This is totally Michael-fied uh, explanation of there was one verse that created everything. And I'd be happy to get your feedback on that thought.
Yeah. I mean, I my analogy is we live in a fishbowl. We human beings do.
Okay.
And the fishbowl is called the universe. So it's a pretty big
Hmm.
fishbowl. But imagine you're a fish and you're in a fishbowl. Maybe the fish can see out. Maybe it's got a sense of what's outside the fishbowl. We have no clue what's outside our fishbowl. Okay, absolutely no
Right.
clue.
Yeah.
Uh, we are in something that we can't penetrate. Um, and as to how the universe may not have any limits in three dimensions, but being a math major, you can wrap it around itself so that you come to no boundaries. Like take the surface of a beach ball. That's two-dimensional, but
Yeah.
you can go forever without running into an edge. So, we can't imagine
Hmm.
four-dimensional things in our head, but you can see.
Yeah.
So we're in
Right.
this space-time fishbowl. We can't see God outside, but there's wonders out there. And yeah, I mean, the word universe is supposed to mean everything. So they've come up with this multiverse to try to get away from fine tuning and how it all
Right.
started. And it's
Yeah.
nonsense. Well, here's another bit of nonsense. People say our
Yeah.
universe popped out of the quantum
Okay.
field. Maybe you've heard that one. And which
Yes.
when anything pops out of a quantum field, A, it has equal matter and antimatter. We don't have antimatter measurable in the universe, so that doesn't work. And B, that just pushes the starting point back. I mean, where did the quantum field come from? The quantum field is some most complex mathematics in the universe. Nobody really understands the quantum field. And while we're at, I'm going to give you one of my other things where I'm going to
Yes.
skip ahead in my
Okay.
my counting to God thing. But I think quantum physics strongly proves the existence of God. And this is getting real nerdy, but there is an experiment that proves that particles can be connected outside of space and time, totally
Huh.
outside of space and time. The experiment is called quantum entanglement, and
Okay.
anybody could look it up. So they've taken particles and they make them exactly the same. And then they separate them. One experiment, they separated them 80 miles across the Canary Islands. When you touch one particle, the other changes. And it doesn't have to be it can be a group of atoms even. They've done it with groups of carbon atoms, buckyballs. The other
Hmm.
changes instantly.
Wow.
When I say instantly, I mean truly instantly. Uh, there's no time for even for light to go
Wow.
between the things. So they
Yeah.
have to
Right.
be connected outside of space and time because, according to the laws of our universe, nothing in space and time can travel
Right.
faster than the speed of light. And I mean, we all have
Hmm.
and skeptics will deride people who say, I feel connected to this. I knew instantly that something happened thousands of miles away. You hear that stuff all the time. Well,
Hmm.
we don't know how things are
Yeah.
connected. And it's just another example of
Hmm.
how there are connections outside the fishbowl.
Right. Well, and going back to the horticulture and biology, which was my favorite in high school, I kind of left the chemistry and physics for the others, but that biology, I was reading a study that your house plants, and I'm looking at Figgy right
Yeah.
past the camera there, our fig tree. We like to name our plants. What can you say? But allegedly, this document that I was looking at and studying was saying that house plants can actually tell when you're about a mile away from home. They have this, and so maybe there's a connection to
Yeah.
that of them sensing your
I think
presence.
there's so much.
And
Another thing, I don't know about house plants, but
mm,
certain types of trees and plants can communicate. Uh, so
yeah,
some plants,
yeah,
some trees, and I forget the exact details, but I mean, there are many, many types of plants that, like one's being attacked by insects, it'll give out some sort of code or something that tells other trees, watch out for the insects. And I mean, which is an incredibly detailed
wow,
system. And don't tell me it arose by some magic word called evolution.
yes,
I mean, how does this help the plant or
yes,
tree that's being eaten to survive? To have
yeah.
a system of communication like that. There are so many things we don't understand.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. 5am Podcast is brought to you in part by mkci.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. MKCI helps companies maximize their AutoCAD, Inventor, Navisworks, and other design software investments. Their innovative products like the CommandSys script editor and the Clash Management Suite will streamline your workflow and boost your productivity. Visit mkci.ca today to discover how they can enhance your competitive CAD advantage. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5am Podcast. It's just so fascinating that we live in this world of so much unknown. So then sticking with let's say the biochemical intricacies, we were talking about the human seed and the plant seed, and there's these living organisms all around us. What are there specific aspects of cellular or molecular biology that you find as compelling evidence for design rather than that
Yeah.
unguided, um, who's new in the slough that came out, is now part
So
of the
that
zoo?
experiment I was talking about that made me think you get life in a dirty
Hmm.
pond, which I call the
Yeah.
goo to you theory. That there was some sort
Okay.
of goo, and then over billions of years, it became us. So let's look at that mathematically, because we know now that life runs code. So let's suppose
Okay.
that the code somehow got in the right position to become life. Okay. And by the way,
Okay.
in 1964, a Yale scientist computed the odds of that happening by chance as one in a number with 100 billion zeros. Not one in 100
Wow.
billion, one in a number with 100 billion zeros. So about the same likelihood as you and I winning some big lottery 11 billion times in a row. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
But
significant
let's
odds.
assume that, okay, it happened. whatever, we have some life. Now, how do you improve that life? How does it evolve into other forms? And the Darwinian theory is that you have mutations. And, and the con job they'll give you is that nature selects the mutations, which they try to uh, turn nature into the designer instead of God. But nature can't really select anything. This term survival of the fittest, the fit organisms are the ones that survive. That's the only way you measure fitness. So it's a tautology. It just says that uh, the ones that survive are the ones that survive when you think about it. But anyhow, when you apply Darwin's theory to what we know about DNA, what you have is errors, mistakes in the coding. Okay.
Okay.
So for humans, it's our DNA code with our 3.2 billion letters. It's like 1,000 very thick books, double sided, double columned, all that. Um, and every generation, we have about 100 mutations in our DNA, maybe more. So it's like
Oh,
it's like sprinkling typos in all those books. And is the
okay.
book going to get better? And the obvious answer is no. You
Hmm.
put typos in a book, it doesn't get better. It doesn't turn into a new type of book. It just eventually breaks down. There is a computer program by the name of Mendel's Accountant where you can actually simulate
Okay.
this effect. And it shows that all organisms are going downhill. So actually, mathematics shows
Hmm.
that contrary to this imagined power of Darwinian evolution to create new species, it can't. The Some of the codes are just
Hmm.
too fantastic to arise by chance. This was something
Wow.
I pointed out in my books. There's these uh, so the code to build a part is called a gene. Okay, and a part is a protein.
Okay.
A gene is a section of code that the 3D printers use, and they build this part. And it's all very complicated. They read the code three letters at a time. They have a supply of pieces to hook together. These are incredible machines, far beyond human ability. And what I've
Sounds fascinating. Well, what I was as we've been talking, of course, I mentioned one of my favorite authors, Jules Verne. But I want to ask you because I was thinking about comic books, and you had talked about the graphic novel, and I was thinking about my younger years of reading the Flash, and then of course the TV series that have come out, and one of the things that we see the characters doing is phasing through
yeah.
solid matter like a wall or something like that. Can you talk about the let's say the theoretical science behind being able to shift or phase through, as they called it, solid matter?
Well, supposedly Jesus did it, but nobody else does it that I know. He walked into
Yeah,
the upper
right.
room, which was the doors were locked. The atoms and molecules in our body are held together through chemistry, chemical bonds,
Okay.
and that's what holds us together. Is the electric force and the chemical bonds of the atoms. So for us to walk
Wow.
through a wall, all of a sudden, all those electrical bonds would have to disappear. We'd still have to get through all the bonds of the door and reorganize ourselves on the other side. Um,
Wow.
I don't see any scientific way that
Fascinating.
human beings can do that.
Right. Well, and we see a different example of that in Star Trek or maybe the movie The Fly, where they have the
Yes, beam me up,
teleporters.
Scotty.
Beam me up, Scotty. And so being able to, that fanciful idea of being able to turn this digital code into actually like a facsimile, a fax machine
Yeah.
sending a letter through the phone lines. Would that be an appropriate
I
comparison?
think so. I think so. And perhaps it's
It's
potentially
it's
possible.
it's
Uh, I have my doubts, but I don't know the limits of technology.
right.
But I mean, human beings we're just so complicated. When to continue my
Yes.
analogy, if you put the typos in the book,
Yes.
the idea is life started with some sort of basic form. And by the way, even the simplest cell is
Hmm.
simplest organism is far more complex than human beings can build. But and somehow it got to us human
Yeah.
beings and our brains. We have at least 54 different uh, proteins in our brains that are coded by different genes
Hmm.
that are not in any other animal. And these are complex codes, and you can't get them by chance. They couldn't have, quote,
Right.
evolved. They're called orphan genes. All creatures have different codes that aren't in other things. And the human brain is the most impressive technology that I know of in the universe. Uh, the ability
Mm.
to coordinate our 300 or so muscles. I'm not sure about that number, but lots of muscles. We stand
Right.
upright without thinking about it. Usually we can breathe and so many systems. We have memory banks. We have the power of reason, and our brains are at least 1,000 times more energy efficient than any uh, computer is. So,
Right.
uh, I mean, again, when you look at it, the
Now, I
evidence for
wanted
God
to,
is just so
yeah,
overwhelming. And
right. Now, we're not quite wrapping up yet, but I wanted to ask, um, how can people get in touch with you and find
sure,
your books?
um, well, my name is Doug L. Last name's just ELL. Uh, I have a website called the name of my first book, countingtogod.com. All of my books are available on
Okay.
Amazon. The one of them I wrote, and this just a couple of years ago, I wrote a novel. It's called Rise Above, about a very wealthy
Okay.
man who has terminal cancer and has a vision, wants to give his money to God, and his kids descend on him and try to convince him using science there is no God. And that I use that as a format,
Okay.
and I'm very proud of that novel. It's called Rise Above. But uh, you can reach me through my website. Um, and I hope people will reach out. I mean, I don't make any money on the books. I just want
Yeah.
to not trying to
Right.
sell the books, but trying to change lives. And I, particularly my new book, the God Proofs. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the reviews have been incredible. Michael, one mother gave it to her 10-year-old son because he was starting to doubt God, and the review said that. He's thanked her 3 times for bringing it home, and he was read it through immediately and sleeping with it. So
Nice. Wow.
and I love those kind of stories because that's what I want to do. I feel like I was intellectually bullied when
Right.
I was a child. I was bullied into thinking that
Gotcha.
science and religion were opposite. And I think a
Mm.
lot of that bullying is still going on. And I don't like bullies. And these people, and the truth is
Right.
exactly the opposites. My new book, The God Proofs, I
Yeah.
think is sort of a maneuver to outflank the atheists in the
Nice.
universities. I mean, let's reach the kids when they're still young enough to realize what truth is.
Yeah. Yeah. And plant some good seeds of knowledge. So I want to ask you then, are there some prevalent, maybe misconceptions that you encounter from perhaps both the religious and the scientific communities, just about that very relationship between faith and science?
Yeah, a lot of people think that science has to exclude the existence of God, which makes no sense. If I'm a
Mhm.
scientist, some people will say I can't uh, believe in God. Well, that makes no sense. Why is that? Science is just figuring things out. It's observation,
Mhm.
experimentation, and reasoning, trying to come to the best explanation. So, what's the best explanation for why anything exists? What's the best explanation for why the laws of physics are fine tuned?
Oh.
What's the best explanation for why all life runs digital code? What's the best explanation
Mhm.
for all the different species and creatures that we have today? And clearly it's God. Um, I think people are misled.
Mhm.
Um, science,
Mhm.
science is figuring it out. And I think we all have to figure out for ourselves what's real.
Yes, right. And so then I wanted, it almost sounds like maybe Occam's
Yeah.
razor is is that looking for the least difficult explanation. I think that's how it goes. But now you've asked, can you get technology by accident? Could you elaborate on this
Sure.
question and its implications for both human and innovation and biological
Yeah, well,
techniques
let's go back to the
or
digital code.
technologies?
I mean, our world these days,
Yeah.
it's increasingly we have code everywhere. Websites, programs, so much, and all of that was created by a mind. Every single
Mm-hmm.
app was created by a mind. Every single website was created by a mind. Uh, and you can't, so when you have that's technology. When you have digital technology that's even more advanced, it can't have arisen by chance. And this really appeals to the nerdy
Right.
mathematician in me. Again, when I was running the numbers, uh, I mean, don't tell me that there's trillions and trillions of planets out there. That's still, that's maybe 25 or 30 zeros. You take that out of a number with 100
Right.
billion zeros, you
Wow.
haven't touched the number. You can't get life by chance.
Wow.
And I don't care how many, planets there are and other stars or galaxies.
Mm-hmm.
It's, technology requires a mind. We have never seen any kind of technology that
Mm.
does not have a mind. And I think
Right.
that's just common sense. That's my common sense proof of God
Mm-hmm.
is that the human mind is the most complex technology in the universe. No one has ever figured out how you get
Yeah.
technology by chance.
Right. So then I was thinking of Napoleon Hill and his book Think and Grow Rich, and he has a statement in there of there's more gold mined from the mines of men than from the mines of the earth. And we've been talking about the seed and the code. Um, can you talk a little bit about, speaking of the technology has to come from somewhere, and Napoleon Hill talking about the wealth of ideas that come from humans? So we get maybe very primitive ideas from our animals. And, my little dog, he's 14 and a half years old. He knew that I was going to get to work. And so he goes from the bedroom on his sleeping mat to sleep beside my chair. So he's ready for work. And so can you talk a little bit about just the thought process that humans have and how spectacular
Oh,
it
it is.
actually
I mean,
is?
supposedly we have as many processing unit and routers as on the entire Earth in our brains. We have uh,
Hmm.
as many neurons, these are very specialized cells in our brain, as stars in a galaxy, 100 billion or more. They are each
Wow.
connected to, uh, each of them is connected to like 1,000 other neurons by sound and light.
Wow.
So we have as many connections as stars in 1,000 galaxies. Okay. And nobody knows how it works. All they can do is say, well, gee, if we poke something into your brain here or cut this piece out, maybe you don't remember these
Uh-huh.
kind of things too good. Maybe this part of brain is related to reasoning, but nobody's got a clue how that
Mm.
technology works. It is fantastic beyond our present capability to conceive. And uh, yeah, how does it work? I like to do uh, crossword puzzles. I like to do puzzles. And,
Yes.
sometimes I'll do a puzzle and I'll put it down. I get stumped. I'm not that good at it, but I like to do them. And then
Hmm.
the answer will come to me. Sometimes
Yeah.
you don't think of something at first and then the answer comes to you. How does that happen?
Right.
So something is working on in
Yeah.
your mind. We've all had that. You're trying to think of a place, a name, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um,
Yep.
when I was doing mathematics, I graduate school level mathematics, I would sometimes go to sleep not knowing how to solve a problem and wake up and know the solution.
Yeah.
And okay, that's a little nerdy and weird, but we've all had things where we wake up and we know something that we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know when we went to sleep, I think, and or similar experiences. I mean, I think we don't appreciate how
Right.
fantastic our brains are.
Yes, and that whole spiritual, perhaps metaphysical side of I was reading a book called The Rich Man's Secret, and part of that book is talking about stop thinking and take the next step. And kind of you had to stop thinking and go to sleep and let the brain do what it does, and it
It
worked it
did.
out for you. That's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. Now, what would you say if you had? We know that time travel is not going to happen, but if you had this opportunity to send a letter back in time to yourself, what is there one piece of advice that you would give to that 10-year-old
Yeah,
Douglas?
I would say, check it out yourself. Don't believe everything
Hmm.
someone tells you, just because they have, I was up last week at a dinner at the Harvard Faculty Club and banged heads with some of the professors up there. That professors are a whole nother level of ego. And I've dealt with a lot of people in my life, but man, and
Yeah.
just because they have students that are all trying to get a good grade and sucking up to them. But I mean, just
Oh,
because
yes.
someone has a title or whatever and tells you something doesn't mean you're right,
Yeah.
particularly when it comes to denying God. And I don't understand. And so many people want to deny God. They don't want to have morals. And we haven't talked about, how there's no real morality
Oh.
without God. There's no absolute morality without God. People don't want morality. They don't want rules in their life. So they've come up with a lot of nonsense. And it gets repeated in our
Hmm.
so-called popular culture, and it's very sad.
It's very interesting. Just as myself, I'm not the scientific, I'm the creative. I love to lay on the grass and watch the clouds go by and see the pictures that come. And it's fascinating to me, just in this less than an hour that we've been talking about, and the one thing, as you're talking about morals, I'm thinking of these fine-tuned controls, so finely tuned. For a while, I worked as a machinist for a number of years, and thinking of I didn't work with the aircraft tolerances, but we had other
Yeah.
tolerances. Minute details on the caliper and or other very fine and expensive measuring tools that I had to buy to do my job. And so to think of the fine-tuned details and controls, not only of the universe, but even within plant biology and animal and human biology, can you talk then a little bit about the need for these fine-tuned controls also on morals? It seems to be the one thing that doesn't have these really God-defined control
Well, I mean,
mechanisms.
morals is a whole different thing, of course, than machine tools. But
Yes.
I think anybody who really thinks about it will agree that without God, uh, morals are strictly made up by definition by people. And, uh, you know,
Yeah.
um, in Hindu societies, when a man died, they threw his widow into the funeral pyre, and that was considered normal. I
Oh,
think that would shock us today, shocks me,
wow.
but there are so many things. The Romans, when they had a deformed baby, they cast the baby
Mm.
outside the city to die. And when Christians came along and they were living outside the city, they took the baby in and raised it. So the Romans hated the Christians because they showed that
Wow.
the Roman morality was worthless, and there were huge
Mm.
persecutions of Christians, as you know. Without God, there is no
Yeah.
standard for right or wrong, and
Hmm.
it's and we need to be grounded in our lives in so many ways. I mean, we need to
Yeah.
know where we stand, where we're going. And we can't, if we try to make it up on our own or fake it without God, we're going to get lost.
Yes, absolutely. And, social media being what it is, in my mind, this kind of relates. You see these different self-defense techniques or, how
Yeah.
to win a fight. And I always remember there's a couple of rules. Number one, the best way to win a fight is to not start one. And the second one is never swing at the man who has his hands in his pockets. That's kind of the two of the rules to live by. But it's fascinating that in these where we get to decide how then shall we live. we have this opportunity to control ourselves and to police ourselves. And I love that idea that God is also the rule giver and the foundation for our morality. And we always have that chance to deviate, but thank the good Lord himself that none of these other universal controls or biological controls deviate from the rules written in our code. So as we're getting close to wrapping up, I want to ask you then, for listeners who might be scientists or engineers or analytically minded individuals, and they're struggling with these questions of faith and approaches, how would you speak to them about some of the questions on morality or science that they have?
There's a lot of good books out there. When it comes to morality, um, Tim Keller passed away, I think, a couple years ago, but he's written fantastic books about Jesus and morality. He wrote a book, one of my favorite books by him is called Counterfeit Gods, and he talks about how people, okay, we don't worship statues, idols like maybe they used to, but we have our own counterfeit gods these days. Money, people worship money, they worship fame, all sorts of things that they make up. So for morality, the books of Tim Keller are good. There are a lot of good books on science, the Discovery Institute. I am I take the Bible literally, that the universe was created in 7 days. We haven't gotten into the science for that, but that's, if you go to sites like creation.com, it's overwhelming. So there's a lot of resources out there. I cite in my first book, Counting to God, I cite quite a number of them. I've got a couple hundred footnotes.
Good. So we will encourage people to check that out. And I got to say, Douglas L., thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's been fun.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it too. And it's like, my older brother was the one that helped me get through math class as I was in high school. And he was the smart one. And I know he's going to love this conversation because our brains are definitely functioning different. That's for sure, even after all these years. But ladies and gentlemen, this obviously concludes our illuminating conversation with Doug. And what stands out to me is just how Doug's journey reminds us that the pursuit of truth often leads us down unexpected paths. So whether you're a person of faith, you're a skeptic, you're somewhere on the spectrum in between those, there's immense value in approaching big questions with intellectual rigor and an open mind. Not just what we're told. Now, the dialogue between science and faith is, some might say, is far from settled. It sounds pretty settled to me. And there's always an opportunity for us to learn what we didn't think was possible and what we didn't know. And so another thanks, of course, to Doug for being our special guest and the remarkable insights. For those interested in exploring these ideas further, of course, you can find all of Doug's work at countingtogod.com. Watch his extended interviews on YouTube. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing to 5 a.m. Podcast, sharing it with some friends who enjoy thoughtful conversation at the intersection of these big ideas. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please seize your day. Enjoy those miraculous sunsets and sunrises and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Clausen, and I encourage you to keep asking questions and keep seeking for wisdom and understanding. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. 5am Podcast is brought to you in part by mkci.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. MKCI helps companies maximize their AutoCAD, Inventor, Navisworks, and other design software investments. Their innovative products like the CommandSys script editor and the Clash Management Suite will streamline your workflow and boost your productivity. Visit mkci.ca today to discover how they can enhance your competitive CAD advantage. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5am Podcast. Need morning momentum? 5am Podcast, Wednesdays, 7 a.m. on WDJY 99.1 FM. Here's the conversation we have for you next time on the 5am Podcast. See?
A loaf of
container of
bread,
milk?
a container of milk, and a stick of butter. Yes.
That's right. And sometimes you're looking for change because you're saying, okay, I got the stick of butter and the bread
Yes.
covered, but
Yes.
I need a little bit
I
more.
need the container of milk.
I need that container of milk. And so, what a great
So
memory,
good.
right?
So good.
What a great memory.
So good. Yes.
Somebody is listening to this and saying,
Mm.
and maybe they're laughing, hoping that they're laughing along with us, but they're realizing that, okay, John Grisham, well, he had 2 hours in the morning.
Right.
And he had maybe an hour and a half, 90 minutes after putting the children down.
Right.
And that's like your spare change that would have bought the container of milk and the stick of butter.
Right. Right.
And the loaf of bread. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to be conscious of our time and realize how precious and how valuable what we can actually accomplish with that is. That's a misconception maybe then that people might say, well, I never thought of time like my spare change. And sometimes I'm looking around because I need to get, I want some grilled cheese sandwiches and I got the bread, but I'm going to find some change in these cushions, get some cheese.
Yeah.
What are those other misconceptions maybe about pursuing dreams later in life that you've encountered, and how have you been able to maybe help people work through them or address them?
Okay, we're having a lot of fun, hard conversations, and that's okay. That's the whole point. Right? So let me just share something else that is controversial, I guess, or not really talked about in the scheme of this whole journey. You don't necessarily need to share your goal and dream with the people who are currently around you. And let me explain to you why. A lot of times people are very happy and very comfortable with the way that you fit into their story and explanation about why they are where they are in their life. You mess around and say, hey, I want to go do A, B, C, or D. You're messing with their story. So oftentimes, if you're going to change your story and you don't want to hear the, well, what about this or what about that? Because you don't need that. I heard a minister say, the best time to kill a dream is in infant stage. The best time to kill a king is in infant stage. So you don't want to, put your goal and dreams in jeopardy by exposing them in infant stage. Many times, even though we want to, and I've lived this, which is why I know I've lived what I'm telling you, keep it to yourself and get to work. They can find out once you've, reached a level of maturity in your mission.
Yep. And level
that
of
would be
success.
One thing. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. That is worth the price of combing your hair and getting up this morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So the other component then of this, keeping the mouth shut, is the resilience success stories. Can you share maybe a significant setback that you might have faced where you had to say, oh, how am I bouncing back from this one?
Oh, there are so many, but let me give you the one that pops in immediately in my mind. I was recently married. I just lost my job. We were living in LA. We had just got a new place that I could barely afford with the job that I had. So my wife is going off to work and I'm sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to do for work. Super depressed, super down. And one morning before she gets ready to go to work, we hear a knock at the door. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Someone's like knocking aggressively at our door. So I'm like, hopping up and I go, it's the repo guy for my car. And I knew this was happening because I hadn't paid them because I didn't have the money. I hadn't paid my car note in 2 to 3 months. So they came and picked up my car.
Wow.
So now, not only do I not have a job, I don't have a car to go even apply for a job. And I have no money. And, for me as a guy, like, my wife is leaving to go to work and I'm like feeling myself like I'm like the bum of the century. In that moment, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, In the moment of lying on the floor, I was like crying like Viola Davis, like tears and runny nose and the whole deal. After she left, I'm like just like losing it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I have to do something. And, I'll never forget through my tears of like, I didn't see this book, but through my tears, I see this book, Think and Grow Rich, on the counter. Her uncle had given it to her